So how was your experience of that release yesterday? Can you say a few words?
You look at birds, and I think children and perhaps many adults, I feel this desire to grasp a bird. You see them flying, they're so beautiful, and there's just something where you want to hold it. And of course, they don't like that very much. You're not supposed to hold on to birds. So to get the experience to actually gently hold a bird, and those doves were very calm. They were very peaceful, they were very calm. And to get that chance to hold this soft, beautiful creature, and then to have the experience of being able to let it go and watch it fly off. There's something very touching about that. There's something very just kind of childlike, freeing,
Yeah.
ecstatic.
It's almost like we fly.
Yeah, you just feel yourself kind of going with them, and it's really sweet, but it's also there's a profound feeling.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you get to hold a bird? Really, you don't. So it's a special thing, and then to be in a group of people, and then we watched them and how they kind of spiraled around before they flew off. So that's very special.
Beautiful, yeah. In the city I come from, and this must be an old European legend. In the center of the city, European cities always have market square, as the heart. And there are thousands of pigeons sitting, for hundreds of years. It's just a part of the landscape of Krakow. And the legend is that they are enchanted knights. Whatever reason, whatever happened, there are knights that under working of a spell. And even in that legend, you have this expression of a feeling that we have towards pigeons, but particularly those kind of more aristocratic pigeons, doves, that they are really noble creatures. So among the creatures of the world, there are those that assume certain specific qualities. When we think about a lion, you have this royal, regal association. You think about hyena, you have specific association with that dog, with faithfulness, fox with cunningness, and doves particularly have this association with nobility. Noble, something. What is noble? What is something noble?
Something that's refined and elevated.
Yeah. So you can imagine that they're really, even among the animals, even among birds, they have this special task. And it's interesting in that connection that in the Grail saga, Parsifal's family, Parsifal's stream, the Grail stream, had as their heraldic insignia, as their symbol, doves, turtle doves. And through that, they were able to recognize themselves among the nobility, among the knights. Physiology of these birds in connection with this special milk substance that they generate out of this special unique organ with which they feed their young, being on the same level as our organ of speech, and also that lotus flower here, 16 petal lotus flower. There is a connection going from the beginning of humanity between doves and us. And doves only live in proximity to human dwellings. You don't have them in woods, in forests. You don't have them in the fields. You don't have them in the meadows. You don't have them in mountains. They're always, in a certain sense, there is a ring. You can imagine there is a ring of pigeons and doves surrounding human communities. A threshold or a barrier, or the task within the organism of the etheric earth to translate our words, our intentions, and convey them to the etheric world, to the father ground. And of course, doves there are the conveyors of our prayer. You mentioned that, I just wanted to address that. When we don't pray for our own intentions, for ourselves or our immediate worries or cares, but we pray for others or for universal causes, this is the highest emanation, highest octave of prayer. And if you pray like that, and if a community prays like that, then you can imagine that all these smaller, albeit important intentions, personal intentions, are attaching to these universal selfless prayers. Just like through Christ going through the cross, the whole humanity is redeemed, potentially, is open for redemption. Through resurrection of one, I mean. We all can resurrect. Through Son's suffering and death and resurrection, the humanity and all beings of the world can find a way to resurrection. What about snakes? Would you be so eager to touch a snake?
I thought you were going to bring a box of snakes and you would release them into the garden.
Wait. So yeah, I can tell you this is a joke, of course, but again, I'm using many examples from my old childhood, from my own culture. And in Poland, you say that someone has a snake in their pocket when someone is really stingy, that they are not magnanimous, that they are not generous. Oh, this person has a snake in their pockets. So, dear community, check your pockets. One aspect of this work that I wanted to ask to have this Pentecost is to bridge and overcome the separation that is today, understandably, in our epoch and time, between us and the animal world, that they at most maybe become symbols for something, or they carry certain functions of our social life. But there's more to that. Animals are letters, are vowels and consonants in the language of the world. They are letters in which logos is expressing and communicating with us. And the ancients knew that. American Indians, their whole amazing lore and understanding of the creatures, animated creatures particularly. And like them, all ancient cultures that were not yet intellectual like we are today, had this ability to read and speak with animals, just like in fairy tales, but it's not exactly our language. They were able to understand that in particular species of animals, particular reality of inner reality of our soul, of our history, spiritual becoming is imprinted. And there is, of course, snake at the very basis of all this. For nearly all cultures, either snake or dragon, they're related. You can think of a Leviathan in the Old Testament. You can think of this Tiamat, the dragon of the Sumerian. You can think of the dragon, the mighty serpent whom Michael treads under his feet.
You can think of the green snake and the beautiful lily.
Of course. That snake in that story is already, in a certain sense, transformed snake. It's a different snake than the snake in paradise. So what is this? What all these stories have to come on? The whole world has venerated dragons in the past, and also snakes. And you can see it in these, just a few examples that I brought here. The most amazing example of that is this ureus, which is this part of the insignia of the pharaoh. Every pharaoh, on his crown or diadem, on his head, had on the level of the third eye this ureus, cobra, the seeing snake. You had in the east, in India, these snake charmers. They're still there. Original hierarchy in the ancient India were the Brahmins, the yogis, and those fakir. So three levels of the soul were related to that. The wisdom, love, developing of love, and taming of the snake. And of course, you have here this picture, which is very important, the moment when Moses lifts up the snake in the desert. Israelites are on the border of the boundary of the desert, and not far away from the promised land, and their illness comes upon them. And that illness, interestingly, expresses itself in their visions of snakes. On one hand, we have this picture of snakes as something very detrimental, lethal. You know, we can say so much even as perhaps, well, Eve receives the apple from the snake at the beginning of the Judeo-Christian lore, mythology, and that means death from the spiritual world. But you can translate it in an immediate experience, less mythological, that Eve gets bitten by a snake, and through that she gets initiated in the mystery of death and illness, gradually, humanity after her, right? So people in the past had incredible respect to snakes, fear, and you have to think about this. That's the funeral mask of Tutankhamun, the very famous Egyptian would look at their pharaohs. They would see snake. They wouldn't see, oh, that's Tutankhamun, he's our king now. They would have an elemental perception of snake. Why? Because snake, in that regard, always was the guardian of the threshold of the mysteries. And that's related to that veneration in the East that is still happening today. That's related to all these pre-Christian cult of snakes that Moses elevated, and in some traditions he crucified a snake. What does it mean? That he brought that which is related to unconscious activity in astral body, unconsciousness, past, if it's not being worked through on the level of the eye, it must bring about illness. Moses knew that. He elevated that snake and he presented it to all the ill as a kind of an emblem, and that was a part of the path of healing for them. So, and of course from that comes the symbol of all pharmacists of the world, and also this is the same symbol as Caduceus, of Raphael's Mercury's staff, two snakes. Right? So on one hand, snake is a symbol of death, mystery, threshold, illness, and we can imagine that this is this lateral snake, so a snake crawling on the surface, but if the snake is elevated, it's becoming vertical, then it becomes a mean of healing and understanding of the mysteries of the world.
And, to that, the Chinese celebration of the dragon, the dance always ends with the dragon risen from the horizontal to the vertical.
Thank you. And that is, of course, related to the release of Kundalini. So these people, those fakirs or snake enchanters, they were showing people that through culture, art, music, through certain movements, an inner process can be instigated that past represented with coiled Kundalini can become something conscious.
Isn't that also just in the chakras?
In the past, yes. What Moses did is he elevated it above a human head, which one can understand as a message. The snake is no longer something private, so to speak, but there is a need to redeem, to elevate the snake. So in the future, that transition from snakes to doves can happen. I'm referring to this Matthew 10:16. Christ says to those sent ones, right? I sent you among sheep among wolves. Therefore, be wise as serpents, be wise as snakes, and innocent as doves. In fact, he connects the past and the future. In the human being, the snake, elevated snake, always is related to what? To our spine, right? There's a nerve system in us, all the way to central nerve system, brain, if you will, is a snake that slipped from crawling on the floor to our erected spine. So when you take it in kind of as I speak in pictures right now, what we've done yesterday releasing those doves, it's actually an immediate acute picture of transforming that personal I-based, ego-based wisdom into something universal, or taking personal prayers and turning them into the message to the world. And we have to have a snake in us. We have to know how to use the snake in us, because that is how we are built in this world. In the future, nerve system will be transformed, of course, too. At some point, that snake entered into us from the earth up. You can see it in the Pharaoh's gesture. That made us wise, that made us knowing how to tame the creatures of the world, how to create a civilization, how to build, how to calculate. All this is snake's knowledge. Or according to the Judeo-Christian vocabulary, this is all Lucifer gift to us. Gift, of course, in German means poison. So on one hand, we have become wise as serpents, but through that we have separated ourselves from all creation. Can you follow that? And in us, in the human anatomy, that separation between us acting in the world as free agents and the world is the fact that that snake is held in the casket, in the spinal column. It's entrapped there. Right? We can't live otherwise. Ever since Adam and Eve was bitten, snake entered into us. Now, we have created an incredible civilization. How do we create civilization? We take something that is in the world, either physical, material, chemical world, or in a spiritual world, and we make it our own. And out of this, we build, or we create solutions, systems, right? Everything. Economy, money circulation, statehood, school, all this, we have created this out of the wisdom of the snake in us. The question is, what if we would stay on the level of the snake in us?
That's why it's that picture of the snake eating its own tail.
Right.
That's what would happen. We would destroy it. It would all become.
Yeah. Its own tail. Ouroboros is that name, that the snake coil that is eating its own tail, chasing its own tail. I think so too. I think something new must have come and you can see it in that Mercury staff. Raphael is Mercury. It's the same being with different names. The healing came with Christ, right? And when you look at this, Raphael's staff is actually Moses' staff. You see it here, right? So the staff is always a symbol for the I in us. And in the past, there was one snake climbing on it. Ever since Moses elevated, preparing the way for the Christ incarnation, that became, and this is, you can imagine this was an enclosed cycle that became separated into two snakes, right? Which is now the symbol of healing. And you remember that the staff of Mercury at the ear has either flame or feathers sometimes. So this, you can imagine that this the dove that is seen by John and by Jesus at the baptism at Jordan is that being that comes from outside, from the spiritual cosmos, comes and descends on the eye of Jesus. and after him with everyone who is open to that gift of the Holy Spirit. So these are pictures, mythological or imaginative pictures of real processes within a human being and human evolution. That through Christ, that snake eating its own tail is severed. From another point of view, is the snake opens itself to the possibility to receiving something from its side. It transforms, metamorphoses into a dove, a little bit like in fairy tales, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say through these symbols. One more thing about this veneration of snake in the East. The most important legend about the dragon in China, in the East, is that it's related to fish becoming the dragon. That the carp swims across the stream. That's kind of a picture of becoming, of going through the resistance, and at the end of this path becomes a dragon. So there's also picture of gaining or receiving initiation of wisdom through adversities of life, right? So anyway, it's interesting that in that regard, in this statement of Matthew 10:16, Christ does not condemn snakes. He recognizes that ancient wisdom, that principle of ancient initiation, that wisdom is important, that wisdom that we have received with the fall. There is a reason we're on earth. But to remain on that level alone, we would have just have a dog-eat-dog situation, and the enclosed circle. There is not, at some point, there is nothing new, and we will just consume everything around us, so to speak.
And eventually ourselves.
Yeah. So, and here is this intervention of the dove, a new principle of initiation that comes from the spiritual world. The redemption, the Redeemer comes from without, and not like in the East, from within with Kundalini mysteries.
Reminds me of the Scorpio constellation.
It's
Scorpio to Eagle, snake.
right. This is related to that. Of course, these are all archetypes. They're all mythological pictures, and Christ uses them in the Gospel. But we have to, like I said, learn to read that language of nature and see how does this express in my development. And when you make a radical step from the animal pictures, snakes and doves, you can say intellect in us is snake. It's a brain-bound thinking, calculation, measurement, comparing, contrasting. All this is based on a wisdom of the nerve system. And then innocence of doves has to do with being open. This is this new what we're actually exercising here at the altar too. And I think it's very much related to the experience of the Pentecost, when these students who were gathered together, and a number of them, the first community, when they had this incredible experience of the Holy Spirit, meaning they started seeing around and understanding things that were beyond their physical brain thinking. And out of this new etheric, if you will, this sense-free, or in the language of our liturgy, pure thinking, Peter, for instance, started telling people about Christ, or all of them actually started speaking from their own angle about the world and events of the world around them. This is the new. So it's an indication for us that in the human being, through Christ, through understanding of Christ's mystery, through understanding your own biography in relationship to that, a new type of conception of conceiving and thinking and feeling and willing is actually growing in us. A dove, innocent, like it's just like the snake is rooted and based on the past wisdom, fallen wisdom. We are opening to completely new wisdom that comes from this ascension sphere. I spoke about it yesterday, that Christ, since ascension, is part of Earth's destiny forever. Something new is germinating at the core of the world. And out of this, a new wisdom new pictures for the future will emerge. It's related to this conversation about ancient myths, ancient lore, ancient or old mysteries, and the new mysteries. And this is something that we're developing in Christian community. We are trying to speak about Christ as not something that belongs to the past. It's something that is opening the way to the future. So what is this new mythology that is emerging from your life and not, so to speak, from grim fairy tales? You understand the question? We are creating new mythology that will lead us into the future, the dove mythology, rather than past mythology and all these ancient symbols. They're important, but their time is actually already gone. So if the civilization, if your students, if people in our times don't want to burn out, we need to feed ourselves with new pictures. And one of them, for instance, is Michael standing on top and opening way to the future. There's one powerful myth. There are others too, of course. Today, we human beings, striving human beings, are the source of new mythology. How do you understand that?
But with the new picture, it's really developing out of our taking that up and collaborating with the spiritual world.
Yeah. So it's no longer saints, for instance, Saint such and such, and Saint Stephen or whatever, but it's Saint Almut, Saint John Ganagian, Saint Tad, and so on. And you see, out of your relationship, living relationship with the Redeemer, with the Christ, all of a sudden you may start seeing and looking at your own life as actually a mystery drama. So it's both. It's individual, but it's also universal. You don't have to anymore look at some examples from the past. You see, in my own biography, I see working of the path of the cross and path of healing and path of redemption. That's new. That is the mythology of the dove. Okay, so much maybe for today. And tomorrow I would like to just conclude two other pictures, sheep, lamb, and wolves. Christ uses these kind of fairy fable pictures all the time. Yeah. So we have to understand how to read what he sees. Jesus is the original Goetheanist. Yeah. He reads the book of nature around him and is able to say, this is our story.